Well, what's going to happen is all the foreclosures are again, and there were balloons at the end of a bunch of them. So the courthouse is going to be flooded with foreclosures. When all those houses hit the market, it's going to flood the market, and it's going to drive prices down. Right now, there's no inventory. You throw it up, what you want. Just.
I already started doing that. I called my realtor about it.
All right, you guys' mics on? Everything's working? Not yet? How are we doing over here? All right, let's call to order. This is going to be City Council meeting for City of Port Richey, Tuesday, March 23rd. At this time, I'd like to invite Pastor Lord for the invocation, please.
Lord, we're thankful to have the strength and ability to serve. And Lord, we just pray for peace for our city. As you said, Lord, we're to seek for peace and prosperity of the city we live in. And in that peace and prosperity, we'll have ours. And so, Lord, we know sometimes it's difficult to live at peace with people. But, Lord, you just pray that we would know how to be peacemakers. Lord, just continue to give wisdom to deal with the COVID situation. And we ask your hand of protection for those that are judged now. Lord, we particularly lift up a change of staff now and our city manager, Father, and the new position and changes. We just pray for peace in that and order and people finding their way. Lord, we always thank you for our fire department, police department, first responders. Lord, just let their home be filled with peace and Lord, protect and watch over them. Thank you for getting the equipment they need, and we ask a blessing on it. Bless our meeting tonight and let the flow have each and every one in Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor William Dittmer. Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell. Councilman Tom McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Duke.
Here. Looking for a motion to approve council minutes.
Motion to approve council minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're going to open it to comments from the general public. There's several people that have signed up in just different areas. There's only one that have signed up, but I'll allow anyone by show of hands after Pastor Lord goes. So welcome, Pastor Lord. Come on up.
Thank you, sir, and council. Leonard Lord, I pastored 8114 Leo Kidd Avenue. I think it was 26 years, March 12. I just really want to thank the city for their kindness and Sean and the team getting the things cleaned up from our cleanup there. We had a bit of confusion with somebody else bringing something in, but I think that straightened out, but they got over Friday. And Sean, thank you. Great job. Looked like y'all even broomed it up. Really looked sharp, but thank you so much. I just appreciate being here in the city. Also, I do have the flyers. Our clerk has them for you. I don't know if you got them or not, but the flyers to the Easter egg hunt. And you can see it's Saturday, April 3rd from 10 to 12. And it's like a carnival. There'll be different age group games to play and prize, and then, of course, as you see, hear the real Easter story of Jesus' resurrection. So there we'll have 3 or 4 age groups, and teams will have what we call resurrection eggs. You know, some will have they'll have a donkey, a dice, a whip, all of that as they go through the story, and they'll get prizes for those eggs and find out that really Easter's not anything to do with rabbits or bunnies or chickens or eggs, but it's to do with God's love for us and resurrection of the dead. So we just appreciate being able to be in Waterfront Park, and we know it'll be a blessing to the community. Also, for those that are interested, we have a good time preparing for this, and so April 1st at 6:30 in our fellowship hall. A volunteer way the day before. Hopefully we'll be bringing some things over. We'll have different candies and bags and things to put together, the prizes. So that night, food will be provided. We'll have pizza. But at 6:30 we're going to be meeting, and what we'll be doing is we'll be doing the Easter egg hunt prep. So the teams that are going to be telling the story, they'll be going over that. We'll be getting all of our prizes ready and all the candy to give out. So if you want to join us, be food there. We have a great time. And with that, I just trust y'all to have a great Easter coming up. And I want to thank Mr. McClary for looking at this. If there's anybody in here that would like to see, we met years ago over in Tampa with 165 ministries. A man named George Otis Jr. had saw the prayer answered that Jesus said, pray that thy kingdom come and thy will be done, earth as in heaven. The Fiji Islands, actually, by the community coming together and reconciling, a reef come alive overnight. A stream was, and these are just 4 of those 15-minute ones in different places. So if anybody would like to view that, it'll show you one of the things that lit the fire in my heart to say, hey, let's love one another, be reconciled to one another, and work together. Amen. So this will be available. We bought all those sets if anybody would like to see those. And thank you very much, and Lord bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Lord. That's all that's signed up. I see that there's some other people here that have come in. By show of hands, would anyone else like to speak during the 3-minute opening general public statement? Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to comments from the city manager, and I wanted to invite our city manager, Mr. Dude.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me run through some of the meetings that have taken place. I met with Steve Sherdell, he's general manager of Hits 106, several other radio stations. He and I talked to a number of partnership possibilities, nothing concrete, but he's interested in partnering with the city to move things forward. Had a luncheon meeting with Newport Richey city manager and new assistant city manager. Met at some length with our contract accounting firm to create a to-do task list, both for CLR and for our incoming finance director. Met with Tammy Verana, our planner. Had an extensive meeting with Big Sur, our IT provider. Most of our staff was present at that meeting and worked through expectations that we have of Big Sur, some of the places we think they may have room for improvement. Reviewed the contract, so we know exactly what we've contracted for. So a good meeting there. Both sides took away a to-do list, and we'll continue to work on that. I've had a number of special events discussions, folks that are interested in doing things in Port Richey, Toys for Tots, Bike Fest, concerts, some private, some public-private partnership, and so as those come to fruition, you'll get more information on those. Some updates on projects. We continue to answer questions from the state auditor, questions on questions on questions. I want to thank staff and legal counsel for all their hard work on that. Pam Ziegler's been instrumental in trying to find answers to what happened 10 years ago, or what was somebody thinking 5 years ago. And maybe the most exciting thing this week is I want to introduce and welcome Rachel Goslin, our new finance director. Rachel? Rachel comes to us from New Hampshire, where she was finance director for a city a little larger than Port Richey, has spent 10 years in municipal finance, walked into a ton of work, and she's jumped right in and gotten after it. So If she looks a little frazzled as you see her the next several weeks, it's because she's got a ton of stuff, and we're going to try to take it easy on her, but we're really glad Rachel's with us. I do have a meeting scheduled with the Restore Act representative for the county to continue the discussion on the dredging project that the bid was approved, so I'll have an update for you at the next council meeting, and that meeting takes place this Thursday. I did receive notice that we have a grant at Nix Park, and I've got a report that's overdue on that, so I've asked staff to get busy on that. We'll get that completed and get that grant closed out. Nearing completion on the stormwater permit report. I want to thank the Public Works staff for helping out with that. That'll be turned in on time. US 19 Islands, Public Works and Parks folks have been working on cleaning up. It's going to take a few days to get it all done, but going to get those tuned up so they look nice. I want to thank Port Richey's Police Department. They hosted an interagency training event today. We had officers from state, county, and city participating in a training event here at City Hall. We also, the fire department staff provided CPR training for city staff, so we got a whole bunch of our city staff through CPR training. Helps them be prepared. You never know what you're gonna find, what's gonna happen. So, been yesterday and today, staff reassignments and office moves have been underway. So, a lot of shuffling in City Hall, people moving from one place to another, and a lot of people doing double duty, doing the old job that they had and taking on the new job. We've also got multiple position announcements to fill in positions that have opened up, positions that have been open. So if you go to the city's website, or if you're connected to Indeed, they're probably sending you notices that we have a number of positions. So if you know of good candidates, tell them to send me a resume and an application. Finally, just want to remind everybody, April 2nd is a city holiday. City Hall will be closed. So, stand for your questions.
We'll start with Vice Mayor.
Any questions other than, at our last meeting, we discussed, and I spoke briefly about it, getting together with Dan Biles and the county on the Nix Park, since they have said they would partnership with us on some of those engineering work that needs to be done. I just want to make sure that we do set up some
Yep.
time to set this up.
Yep, we'll do that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
And one of the things I wanted to ask Mr. Dude is, I know that you've been shifting some staff around. Once the dust settles and you have everyone kind of where you want them, can you maybe put together a chart for us to show where everybody's at?
Yes.
Just so we know, how the city's functioning in terms of the employees.
Yeah, once we get everybody in the geographical positions and up and running on their new duties, I'll put together an org chart so you know who's doing what, and get that to you. That probably next council meeting.
Thank you, I appreciate it. That's all I had.
Nothing further, thanks.
Only question I have is our city webpage.
So I have a stack of proposals that I inherited. I've also reached out to another company, Civic Duty. That's coming. We're gonna, we'll pick a contractor and get that updated, get it turned into something that's pleasant and user-friendly. So it's on the list of projects, but I got to get staff situation stabilized. But yes, sir. And I've got, like I said, I think 4 proposals that someone asked for 6, 8, 10 months ago, and so we'll get that moving.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. We're going to move on at this point to comments from mayor and council, and I was going to open up with just some general comments. One of the things that I saw recently, I think it may have even been either today or yesterday in the paper, one of the papers reported that our city does not allow early voting, and I just, for some reason, didn't think that was correct. So what I wanted to do is, I think we do have early voting, and I wanted to ask our city clerk, which is now operations manager, the process or procedure for early voting if we have it, if we can get that information?
Yes, absolutely. As I've announced at previous council meetings, supervisor elections, they actually brought over the early voting packet and information and everything on March 5th. So from March 5th till now until just a few days before election, we have early voting. I have a voting booth set up. Anyone can just bring their driver's license and voting registration card, and we can early vote. As of right now, I've had no early voting come to City Hall, but I'm registered to take them, and also I have Ashley McDonough, who is the interim city clerk. She's also allowed to accept votes. So for any reason, if I'm not here, she will, and vice versa. So early voting is operational here at City Hall. I just also want to point out, speaking of which, our next meeting will be on Wednesday of April 14th, because Election Day will be on April 13th. So just to let everyone know, voting and Election Day is on April 13th, and our next council meeting will be on the 14th, which is a Wednesday.
Okay. And then the only other thing I wanted to ask you is, when people come into the building to early vote, do they go to the same place where they would pay their water bill?
As of right now, they can go there. My office is on that side, but I'm in the transition of moving over to the administrative side of the building. I'm in the process of doing that, but they can come to either window, and one of us will definitely direct that person to where they need to vote.
Okay,
so
perfect.
That's not a problem.
Thank you. That's all I had for general comments, and I was going to pass it to.
I kind of made my general comment earlier.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. We're going to close general comments at this time. We're going to go on to comments from boards and committees. And Mrs. Rodriguez is here. I wanted to invite you up for any announcements or information.
Hi. The CAC, we've done a couple things with Meet Your Neighbor. We're going to meet the first Wednesday of every month. This next Wednesday is April 7th, and we'll be at Hooters. We haven't been there, so April 7th at Hooters, 5:30. And it will be the first Wednesday of every month. If that Wednesday happens to fall on like 4th of July or something, then we'll change that date, but it'll be the first Wednesday of every month. And the park cleanups, we decided to do that the third Saturday of every month. So that's going to be April 17th, and we're going to do waterfront. Obviously, that's quite a larger park than we've done, so we will need a lot of help, a lot of hands cleaning up that park. So,
That
we
was what date? That's right.
17th, April
17th.
17th. Mhm. We get a lot of cigarette butts and stuff. If you want, make sure if you have grabbers, that's always helpful. But we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
One
A
question,
here.
what
Mr. Rowe.
time do you typically start the cleanups?
9. It's my day off.
Ooh, that's early. Okay.
That's early.
On a Saturday.
Have a cake?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all we have from boards and committees. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Looking for either motion and/or questions.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Council business, we're going to move on to at this point. The first item up on council business is the first reading of City of Port Richey fertilizer ordinance, and I was going to pass that to our city attorney, Mr. Mathau.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I read the ordinance, I'll answer any questions first. What happened here is the DEP came to a determination this year that we're within a watershed of a nutrient-impaired water body, and therefore we're required to pass the model ordinances. As odd as that may seem, Mayor, you as an attorney, there's actually a statute talking about the model ordinance. It's called "You Must Pass the Model Ordinance," pretty much. And so having reviewed that, we have no choice. And what you have in front of you is the ordinance. I'm going to read by title only, and then behind that is the latest model ordinance. What I did was, in consultation with Mr. Dude, is I prepared this ordinance. It's slightly different than Newport Richey's. If you look at it, there's a few words different because the model ordinance has changed. They had to pass theirs a few years ago. But we made the model ordinance here the minimum, okay, the minimum requirements to meet the model. And if you look at the model, you'll see different guides there, and saying you could do this, you could do guidance, I think you'll see at the end of each section, you could do this, you could do that, you could make it more stringent. So I'm going to read it, and if at a later date you want to make it more stringent and have more requirements, you can do that, and we can amend it. Okay, so these are minimum requirements. Is there any questions? Or all right, I'm going to read ordinance, first reading of ordinance number 21-683 by title only. An ordinance of the City Council of Port Richey model ordinance for Florida-friendly fertilizer use on urban landscapes, providing for a new article to Chapter 14 Environment, Article 9, Florida-friendly fertilizer use on urban landscapes, providing for findings, providing for purpose and intent, providing for definitions, providing for applicability, providing for timing of fertilizer application, providing for fertilizer-free zones, providing for low-maintenance zones, providing for fertilizer content and application rates, providing for application practices, providing for management of grass clippings and vegetative matter, providing for exemptions, providing for training, providing for licensing of commercial applicators, providing for enforcement, providing for penalties, providing for inclusion in code, and providing for an effective date. Looking for a motion.
And open it for council, either for motion and or discussion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 21-683.
Second.
Motion and a second. Before we vote, anyone from the general public want to speak about this? Seeing no hands, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to item 4, which is the discussion of vehicle speeding concerns on Old Post Road and Bay Boulevard. I'm going to pass this over to our city manager, Mr. Dute, for introduction.
So Port Richey PD has ordered a piece of equipment, as we discussed 2 weeks ago. It has not yet arrived. When it does, we will be ready to start assessing actual speed on old posts. So more data to come when that piece of equipment has arrived. I didn't include them in your packet, but I have a significant number of articles, papers, additional information for your reading pleasure on the topic of traffic calming. Those range anywhere from 1 page to literally a PhD dissertation of 150 pages. So I didn't want to burden the clerk with printing up all of that, but I'll make that available to you. They're all public documents. They're in the public domain already. But you know, if you wanted to read more about 10 or 15 or 20 different options for slowing down traffic on any particular road, there's a lot of information in there. But at this point, we're awaiting equipment to gather actual data for you. Obviously, when that comes in, we'll come back with that information for you to deliberate.
At this point, is there any recommendations or action required that the city's recommending on this issue?
Mr. Mayor, at this point, as I said 2 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago, the traffic law as it is enforceable. We've spent a considerable amount of time talking about it. You know, we'll bring you more information, but you know, PD has spent a considerable amount of time engaged in enforcement, education, public engagement, actually having residents come, you know, take a look at their speed monitoring devices and estimate what speeds are. So at this point, there's no recommendation for change, sir.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. At this time, I just want to open it up for discussion amongst the board. There's no action required, but I wanted to get some input from the
I have a
councilman.
question. Any of the statistics from the police department on that section, Old Post?
What we have, we'll bring it to the next monthly meeting. We haven't done it for this meeting because it's normally done on the meeting, the first of the month, first meeting in the month.
And I noticed on Bay Boulevard, you had, the city of Port Richey had a speed limit sign, a digital monitoring the speed. Does that keep track of the number of vehicles that would exceed that speed limit? I mean, is there something I'm not aware of it. And
That's just a speed trailer that we were finally able to get fixed. It had been down since before I arrived here. Officer Williams was instrumental in not only getting it repaired, but working on repairing it himself. So we've been able to get it out and deploy it. And it's actually more than speed monitoring, it's a speed information time. So you'll know if you're speeding, it will tell you. So that's just almost like a warning device for people. And then once the data collection equipment arrives, then that'll be deployed in other areas, and then we'll collect that data.
so currently, that's not collecting the data?
No.
Okay,
It's an existing piece of equipment that's been here for quite some time.
And the question I had for you is, once we collect all that data, will you be in a better position to help us with some recommendations?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion, comments, questions amongst the board at this point?
the only thing I want to bring up is that this discussion is vehicle speeding concerns on Old Post Road in Bay Boulevard. Originally, we started strictly on Old Post Road, and honestly, I like the idea that we concentrate on that, since that's where the complaint, that's where our problem, the residents been complaining, and really concentrate on that as opposed to the other areas of Bay and Old Post.
And I wanted to comment on that because I agree with you. And on this, there's a section of Old Post, I think that's going to be involved in a traffic study anyways upcoming as we expand the waterfront overlay district. And I know that I think there's some traffic studies that are tied into Old Post on the other side. And the original complaint was actually Old Post on the opposite side of the stop sign on Bay Boulevard.
At the north side.
On the north side, correct. And I agree that I think we should focus on that issue and that complaint. And I was suggesting that maybe we narrow this topic so we don't expend too many resources to that one area. And that would be my recommendation or suggestion.
And I agree with that.
I think we originally started with this discussion with putting speed bumps on that north side of Old Post Road. And again, we could probably get, I also believe we asked last time for some recommendations in association with putting speed bumps in that section from the fire department, from the police department. How does speed bumps affect or not affect their vehicles and their course of doing their daily business? I agree wholeheartedly with let's focus on one section at a time as we go through the city. You know, north side of Old Post, south side of Old Post, as we look at the waterfront overlay district, and then ultimately Bay Boulevard, east and west of that intersection. I think the original conversation we started out where we kind of went tangential last week was that north side section. And I had originally said, well, if the intent is still to put speed bumps in that north side section of Old Post, you really can't put speed bumps in a 30-mile-an-hour speed zone. You'll tear your car apart. And so, you know, to focus the conversation more, instead of being fairly broad, let's look at Old Post north side. Do we want to do speed bumps? Is it worth reducing the speed limit in that north side of Old Post? And I also believe one of the asks last time was a review of what is typical for a road such as Old Post north side with residential area. Is that a 20 mile an hour? Is that a 30 mile an hour? Or is that a 25 mile an hour, which is what I most typically see? So I really would like to restrict the conversation, and let's look at north side Old Post. Do we still want speed bumps? Don't we want speed bumps? And do we need to make the speed adjustment to accommodate those speed bumps? Because that was that started months ago. We want speed bumps, came from the residents, not from.
And one of the comments that I wanted to make is there's a speed bump talk, but most of the times traffic's addressed, it's normally they adjust the speed first, and then they address whether or not speed bumps are needed. So sometimes I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse when we're talking about speed bumps, because you may adjust the speed downward and it may solve the problem, and then there's no need for speed bumps. So, you know, I think that there's a process that we should follow as we look at each of these.
I can personally tell you, heading out to Brasher Park, you need speed bumps, because that's 20 miles an hour on that road, and I hear them spinning out and burning their wheels and virtually every night. So I can say right off the bat, you've already made the speed limit adjustment. It isn't working. I know the cops don't have resources, because those guys are there, they drag race, and then they're gone within 5 minutes. So I can tell you firsthand, you need speed bumps on that road.
But the speed's already been addressed. It's already been reduced.
Coons Road is
Coons
20
Road is
20 miles an
an
hour.
20 miles an hour, that's what I'm saying.
it's
So there's
been-
no reason to touch the speed limit there, it's only whether or not there should be speed bumps.
Correct.
When we're talking about out in front of Avila Bay on Old Post, it's different, because you have two different facets. You have to look at what the proper speed should be, whether or not it should be reduced. And then once that happens, whether or not that is effective in slowing down traffic. If not, then the next discussion becomes, well, we've reduced the speed and resolved the issue. So now we take the second step and we talk about whether or not speed bumps are necessary. So I think that it should be, that it should happen in steps and not necessarily all at once. That's just my personal opinion on how we should approach it. And I'll pass it to Councilwoman Sorrell.
Well, if we limit it to Old Post Road, we can't include Coons on that. I'm sorry. You either look at all of them or you don't, and the only way you can get to Old Post is through Bay Boulevard. So, I mean, why are we narrowing it down so small? I mean, we're there, we're looking at the area, we should be taking that intersection into consideration, because like it's been said before, if we're gonna have a red light in Port Richey, it's going to be at Bay and Old Post. And I think that we should be aware of what's going on in the entire area. We don't have to go all the way back to your neighborhood if it bothers you. But, you know, let's just go ahead and take care of business and look at the entire picture.
Okay. Thank you. Councilwoman Sorrell, Vice Mayor?
I think Jenny and I are on the same page. I think we should look at the whole thing. One thing that was brought up, speed humps. Somebody talked to me and we were talking about this, and they live next to a speed bump, and they said the noise all night long of that boom, 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 they could hear it in their home. So one of the things we may want to consider is more of those speed humps than the speed bumps. Also, if you go to the south side, I don't know if you guys get over there that much, but there are speed humps and 20-mile-an-hour limit, and everybody's quite cordial driving back through there. So it definitely seems to slow down the traffic, which is
But I've lived on that side of the city now at some point, and you still hear the traffic, and not from the actual cars going up and down, but from the actual when they hit the speed bumps. It's still you
the
still
humps
hear
are
that.
better than the bumps, is what I'm.
But that you still
pointing
hear them. It's still there.
So I'm more for looking at reducing the speed in the entire Bay and Old Post area, just dropping that down to 25. Well, a lot of residential, most residential places I see are either 20 or 25. And especially if you look at the south side of Old Post and Bay, that's the school bus area too. So slowing traffic down is probably a good idea there as well. So I think we should consider, now I'm fine with the speed humps on the north side because I know that's a problem, but slowing everybody down on Bay and on Old Post, you can see how many signs we'll need. It didn't take that many signs to change it. And I think that would put us more in line with most residential streets that are 25 miles per hour.
Okay. I have a suggestion. I think we should vote amongst the council to see whether or not we want to narrow the scope or whether or not we want to continue with the broad scope, so we know where we're going to go moving to the next.
Anyone here can make a motion and anyone here can second it, so who wants to?
I don't think we need to even do that until we get the data that's going to be provided by the police department, because it has been said that those of us that are walking do not know how fast those cars are going. So what we really need is some real hard evidence that these guys are speeding, that we have an issue with that. Most of us hear it, most of us are not happy with the noise and the problems that we have. So I think let's wait for the data before we make any kind of decision on how we're going to move forward.
I agree that we should have more data before we move forward. The question is whether or not we collect data for the entire area, or whether or not we focus our resources on where the original complaint was.
I think the entire area.
Okay, so we have one vote for the entire area.
And I'm just talking about that little
Okay.
intersection right there, because if they can get through that, they can get to Coons.
Well, my expectation is once he gets his new toy, he's gonna be putting it up all over the place at some point in the city, just from an enforcement standpoint, so he knows where to enforce and where to put his
Yeah.
resources overall.
We only
So-
have basically one north-south and one
Yeah.
east-west road.
But-
And those are the ones we're talking about.
Yeah,
So-
but I would think that eventually go throughout the city. At some point, I'll see that little toy.
Well, I'm fine with tabling it till we get more information. That's fine.
Just table the whole discussion on everything.
Because he may come back, and if you want to put it to a narrow scope and he comes back and say it's worse on Bay Boulevard, then you're going to change the scope.
I think the entire area needs to be looked at. I don't think we need to expand much further than that. I think we have to have the idea, because the traffic comes in on Bay Boulevard. They can't get to Old Post and they can't get to Coons any other way.
And I guess one of my reservations is most people that drive down Bay Boulevard, and it's a large group of people that live in the city, all the people that live down on Harbor Point, Harbor Isles, it's a long drive up Bay Boulevard from the very end all the way out. And I think Mr. Kinsella probably makes that drive every day, multiple times up and down that road. And I've talked to the folks, and some of the folks, and I talked to, I think, a couple of your neighbors on Bay Boulevard, kind of in the middle, and I've been talking to different citizens, and the general consensus amongst the handful of people that I've talked to isn't that they believe that the speed limit is unsafe. I think that they believe that it's an enforcement issue, that people are exceeding 30 miles an hour, and then that's the problem, that's the issue. It's not necessarily the speed limit itself. I don't think they have an issue where it's at in terms of just some of our citizens. And I think that lowering Bay Boulevard to 20 or 25 and then putting speed bumps potentially makes that drive from the very end on the point all the way out. It's a much longer.
If you put it at 25, people will drive 30. If it's at 30, they'll drive 35.
So that was just the feedback that I have. But I think concern
Let's
with
just
board-
get the data for the small area of Bay Boulevard and Old Post Road, from the WOD to Brasher Park, so that we can include Coons, and find out what we've got to deal with.
Okay, so do we have a consensus that we want data on the whole area? Is that where we're headed here?
I vote yes.
Okay, so we have 1 for yes, 2 for yes. Mr. McClary?
Yes.
Numerous meetings ago, we've had a group of residents come to us from Old Post, the citizens just north of Bay Boulevard, complaining about the speed, looking for. We have really not addressed their problems. They're the ones that came to us. They're the ones that brought this to our attention. And honestly, we need to concentrate. That's the original complaint, and now we're going every direction but what the original complaint is. I think we need to focus on the original complaint. Let's address that, resolve that, and move to the other areas. But it's not fair for the residents that's been here to these meetings, that signed a petition. It's really not fair. You know, as a council, we owe it to these citizens. Since they're the ones that brought this complaint, they're living it day in and day out. We need to address it and not get wandering in other areas, which is prolonging the issue on hand. So I'm asking that we concentrate on to Old Post north of Bay Boulevard, and let's address that and get some resolution for those residents.
The only way we can do that is just to increase the enforcement in that area. It's too small of an area. And I know that we need to address those people. I've been here for these meetings too, and I understand the original complaint, but the scope is a little bit bigger than that, and it feeds into their central complaint. It needs to be addressed by taking the entire area into consideration so that we can address it properly. Because right now it's just enforcement for those people. We need to address the traffic problem. So I don't think we're going that much bigger. I mean, we're talking blocks here. And all the traffic comes in on the same way. How can you concentrate on 500 feet of a road when everything else is feeding into it?
Again, our attention should be to Old Post north of Bay. The residents, they came here, they're the ones that brought this up. We need to address this and get some resolution to that.
And how would you do that?
So what I want to do so we can be kind of more productive and move on, I think that Mr. Kinsella and I are probably on the same page that our resources should just stay focused on that area, particularly to address our issue first. But I think there's 3 votes to look at everything at this point. So I think by majority rule, I think that that's going to be the direction for our city management and at this point, because I think.
And I
that-
don't think this changed the time frame.
So.
It's
I don't
not
believe it's
gonna
going to change
change
the
it.
time frame at all for those people. I see them here every time. I see them out when I'm walking all the time. I see them out there. It's not going to change the time frame, but what we're doing. You're still going to wait for the report, and when it comes out, all it's going to be is changing street signs from 30 to 25 or whatever is agreed upon.
And there'll be recommendations as to whether or not we should do any of that.
Exactly.
And the chief
To-
will have that.
To clarify the ask, are we waiting for him, the chief, to analyze all of the roads at one time, or
No.
We have-
all of the areas at one time, and then generate one report, or are we going to get
We
we'll
have-
start at north side
we
of
have-
Old Post?
We have 2 main roads,
Yeah, exactly. I
So
mean,
it's-
it's going to be a week per
a week per side,
side.
quarter it up.
So that's 4 weeks.
Right.
So to Tom's extent, we're already pushing it 4 weeks for the first round of data.
Yeah, but if it comes in the data says people aren't speeding, what do you?
Well,
You wait for
and that's
all the
actually
data.
that's actually the question. Let's say people aren't speeding anywhere. Magically, wave the
Magically,
wand,
right.
no one's speeding. Do we still have a problem with the cars going too fast? Because then the perception is, that everyone's speeding. Well, in fact, everyone's not speeding. That's the right speed limit. Do we now lower speed limits?
Can I touch on where we're headed with this? Because I think what Mr. Kinsella and I were kind of pointing out is that we'd like to put whatever equipment we have where the problem is and the complaints are first and address that. And then
I
after
agree.
that's
Yes.
addressed.
I'm
if
fine
you-
with that.
I would
Yes.
say, let's break up the report,
Right. Start
give me
on
the
that-
data as soon
the
as we
north-
can.
north side
We'll
of Old
start
Post.
north side of Old Post and work our way around.
There you go.
I would really like to allow Chief Robinson to make his decision on how he wants to do this study, because he's the one that has to present the information. So maybe he is the one that should need to determine the scope of this study. And yes, these people do deserve it. And if nobody is speeding over there, then how are we going to address their problem?
If no one's speeding over there, how we address the problem is lower the speed limit, and let's go right back to where we started, let's lower the speed limit.
Well, then let's get the data and find out.
I mean,
For
we're going in a circuitous
for the-
argument here at this point. So do we want the speed limits lowered on north side of Old Post from 30 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour, or 25 miles an hour, or whatever number in between, and forget about the enforcement portion of it? And
You can't.
how can you not?
If you lower the thing, you have to enforce it. You can't make a law
I'm not
that
saying you
can't
don't enforce the speed limit if you lower it. I'm saying you don't focus on whether people are breaking the speed limit or not.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to weigh in on is probably the person sitting in the room that's going to know most about this, which is training and experience, is going to be our police chief.
Exactly.
So that's why I haven't really weighed in as much, in my opinion, and why I was kind of waiting, because I'm really going to weigh heavily on whatever he decides.
That's why I was hoping last meeting to get a recommendation, but I just heard there's no recommendations.
Well, I think there's some equipment that he wants to use to obtain that, and it takes a little time, I guess, to obtain that information.
Okay.
What it sounds like, so.
Well, what I'd like to do is, once the equipment gets here, it takes 7 days, which you will need to collect data from each section for 7 days. We'll start on Old Post, where the complaint started. We'll take care of Old Post, and that'll be the first report, and then we'll work on Bay.
How soon is this equipment coming?
It depends on when they deliver it. We should have it by this week.
So realistically, by next council meeting, we may be able to have the north side of Old Post, some data and a recommendation, and then we can deal with the rest of it at a meeting after that at some point.
We're looking at, I'd like to put it out on the north side of Old Post for the first week, and then the second week on the south side,
Okay.
and get the data from both sections, and then the following week do the same thing on Bay.
So I'm going to throw a flyer out there. Why don't we, on the next meeting, put on the agenda the north side of Old Post, where we discuss only the north side of Old Post. We'll have the data theoretically for the north side of Old Post, and then we'll address them by sections.
I agree.
You guys like being so narrow, but I'll go along with it.
By consensus, I think that's the best way to proceed.
So we changed it.
Yes.
Thanks, Todd. That's fine.
I look forward to having this on the agenda next
Yep.
meeting.
Does that close the discussion?
Yes.
Any questions from Mr. Dude on what's to be expected of the next?
No, sir, I think we're clear.
We're clear as mud?
North
Good,
side
can
of
you
Old Post?
explain it to the rest of us?
Yes, I'd be glad to. We're going to gather information on the speed of vehicles on the north side of Old Post. Chief and I will put together a report so you have that data. The extent to which you think raising, lowering, or leaving the same the speed limit or adding speed bumps will make a difference for speed or for the perception of speed, that's your call. You let me know what you want to do, but I will get you the data.
I love it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item up for discussion is going to be the appointment of members to boards and committees. And I wanted to have Ms. Licari, our operations manager, handle that at this point. Is that correct now? This new title change? Okay.
No, he's still Mr. Licari.
Well, he's a different position.
I haven't changed my last name.
No, your title's changed. Okay.
For City Council's consideration is the appointment of a new member for the Citizens Advisory Committee, Dave Mueller. He reached out to me, emailed me, and asked me to join the CAC. I've reached out to Chairwoman Linda Rodriguez to talk to Mr. Mueller, for them to. Mr. Mueller has already attended several CAC meetings, and then they've also had a rapport. Both of them are here tonight if council wishes to talk to either one of them. So Mr. Mueller and Ms. Rodriguez is here for any questions that you may have. I recommend council to appoint Mr. Mueller as a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Excellent, thank you. I wanted to invite Mrs. Rodriguez up, if you don't mind. Thanks for coming on up. I just wanted to know if you had any recommendation.
Absolutely, we would welcome Dave to our committee. He comes to the meetings, he's been coming to our cleanups and events and stuff, and he's a big supporter, so we would absolutely welcome his input and help.
Fantastic, thank you. Any questions from anybody? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller, come on up.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. What can I help you with?
Welcome. It's nice to see a familiar face here at the meeting. Any questions or comments from the?
I think Dave would be a great fit. I think it's a
Yes, he
good
was
position.
a wonderful addition. So.
Yep.
I agree. I appreciate, and I wanted to thank you for all the time that you put in and volunteered to help the city and do what you can to point the city in the right direction. So I wanted to thank you, and then I think we probably should look for a vote.
Yeah, we have to do a motion, correct?
Yep.
Motion to appoint Dave Mueller, Citizens Action Committee,
Second.
or Advisory Committee.
Advisory.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Welcome. Thank you.
Can I make a statement?
Absolutely.
The reason that I'd like to throw my name in the hat there is I believe everybody, myself included, that as a resident here has an obligation to try to make this city better. My intent in every aspect of my being is to find ways to make this city work better, operate better, be better. And I would like to contribute in that way. And I appreciate your voting me in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. The last item for council business is the City Hall surplus of equipment. And I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke.
So once again, we bring you surplus, little or no value equipment to be considered. If you will approve that, we will dispose of it and continue to make space in the closet, affectionately known as Radio Shack. We've got several more iterations of this, and the fire chief has some equipment coming as well. But I would ask that you approve this equipment to be disposed. It has little to zero value.
Open it up for motion and/or discussion.
I make a motion that the equipment so noted be disposed of as determined by the city.
I have one question.
Yes.
It says disposed of or sold. Have we determined this is all to be disposed of?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the printers are not functioning. The battery
I
packs
was just
do
going
not
by the
function.
agenda, it said or
Yes, sir.
sold.
Actually, I have one question. Are the shredders functioning, or are they shredders?
I didn't know we had shredders on there,
Yeah.
but
I see one in the picture.
There's two of them there.
yeah, everything on there is not functioning.
Oh, okay.
That's easy.
If it was, I'd put it on buy, sell, trade, try to get 20 bucks out of it.
I was going to say, shredders can't really go obsolete, so.
So we have a motion on the table.
Second.
Any need for further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to old business. I'm going to shift to the other side of the room to start at this time, and Mr.
About
Cassell.
that at this time, thank you.
Councilman McClary.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
I'm just fine, thank you.
I hate to bring up this little bit business. Well, first of all, I saw that I did a tour of the police department, and it looks like a true police department in terms of how neat, orderly, and clean it is. I noticed there was a monitor out front. There were a bunch of additions that had been there since I had been there. I saw the dispatch room. There's not wires hanging all over the place, and it looked really clean and just really nice. But what I did want to ask is how the new equipment or CAD system are working, and the status of the cars as well, while we're putting on the spot.
Yep, the CAD system is working fine. Again, it's still a learning process for the officers, but they're getting it. Detective Howard is sort of our quasi-IT guy. When they have questions, they're able to come to him, and he's able to address the situation for them and/or put in a ticket with the Pasco's IT if it's part of their equipment that they're having problems with. So all in all, it's been going well. As far as the cars, we still only have the one. We're still waiting for the rest. When we went out there, because I went out there to pick that one car up, he indicated that it's our vehicles and Orange County Sheriff's Office vehicles that he's waiting for this equipment, these lights, in order to finish his 2020 projects. So we can't make a move any faster. If I could, I would.
Excellent, thank you. And then I was going to ask the fire chief, same question with the CAD system. Any issues that you're having at the fire department with it?
No, sir. Same thing as Chief Robinson said, there's just a little bit of a learning curve for the most part from the dispatchers. They went through some training, it seems like a lot better. Everything seems like it's going pretty good.
Beautiful, thank you. That's all the old business that I had. I appreciate it, guys.
Oh, you hit on my old business, so.
Okay. And with that, I'm looking for motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we're going to take a 5-minute recess and come back for the CRA meeting.
What? Okay, we won't.